All right. Well, so welcome everybody. We're going to talk about the John Muir Trail and through hiking the John Muir Trail. I'm actually not going to talk about this one too much, other than to introduce the two presenters we have tonight. Emma Massick, who is our community manager at Social Adventures. You may see her online here and there. And Tara Magpusao, who is one of our ambassadors for the Six Pack of Peaks Challenge, and both of whom have through hiked the John Muir Trail. I think Tara, you did it northbound, and I think Emma did it southbound. Yeah, I'm sure we'll hear all about that. So you can correct me later if I got that wrong. I just wanted to introduce this because I think the JMT is something that's really near and dear to my heart. And it also is part of the origin story of the Six Pack of Peaks Challenge. Back in 2010, when my girlfriend at the time, who is now my wife, were training for the John Muir Trail, we came up with this idea of these 6 peaks that are increasingly higher, increasingly difficult. And that was the birth of the Six Pack of Peaks Challenge. And so the John Muir Trail is something that I've done twice, and I loved it and really enjoyed it, but I thought it'd be really nice to get, somebody else's different perspective. So ladies, I'll turn it over to you, and you can tell us all about the John Muir Trail.
All right. So just as an overview about the trail, the John Muir Trail covers 211 miles throughout the Sierra Nevada mountain range in California. And it extends from Yosemite down to Mount Whitney, or from Mount Whitney up to Yosemite if you go the other way. Mount Whitney is the tallest peak in the lower 48 states. It's named after naturalist John Muir, the founder and original president of the Sierra Club, and the trail was originally established by the Paiute tribe. They named it Numupoyo, or the People's Trail. There's some quick stats on the side there that tell a little bit more about it, but we will go into that as well. For my JMT trip was July 25th through August 12th in 2018. I was on the trail for 19 days. I had 2 days of traveling to get there and get back. So altogether, it was about 21 days of my time, but it was 19 days of hiking. I hiked solo. I did meet some people along the way, which I'll talk about in a bit, but planning and for the majority of it, I was hiking alone. I had a deadline for the return date, which put little bit of fire under my feet because I had to be home by August 13th. I had a flight to catch for a job that I was starting. So I had to really stick to the schedule that I made for myself and make up any lost time that I had. I did 2 resupplies technically, and I took no 0 days. Sometimes on through hikes, people take what's called a 0 day, where they hike 0 miles that day and just kind of rest and relax. Sometimes they'll go into any cities that are along the way, or stop at the different resupply stops, stuff like that. I didn't really have time to do that, so I didn't. I documented my trip afterward on my blog at pepperhikes.com. Pepper is my trail name. I have not updated that blog in a while. Maybe I will get back to it soon, but you can still read all of my daily kind of hike logs and experiences on the website, and on my you can get to that also through my Instagram page at pepperhikes. I did a sunrise summit of Mount Whitney, and my favorite pass was Glen Pass. I will give it to Tara to talk about your trip now.
I'm a little similar to you. So I did mine, I think, in 2019, which was like 3 summers ago. And I did it August 11th through September 1st. It was like 22 days. I also did mine solo and I went northbound. I started at Cottonwood Pass because I couldn't win the lottery. I think I applied for a few lotteries, but I didn't get any or win or whatever it is. So I was able to start at Cottonwood Pass, which added on, I think I did total 250 miles. So the JMT is like 211. So a lot of people will also start at Cottonwood Pass, and that put me at Mount Whitney at day 3, which was kind of nice. It was like a big climb up until there, and then it was kind of chill after that. No 0 days. I did have what I call a Nero day because we went into MTR. We, as in my trail family that I hiked with for about a week. Muir Trail Ranch is a resupply location. I think that was like 11 days in. And so you have to like catch the ferry to go across the water. I heard last year that it was so low that they didn't do the ferry, but so you have to catch it at 4:30 because it only leaves in the morning and it goes in the evening. So from 4:30 to 4:30 the next day. And so it was kind of like a 0 day, but we hiked both days, but had 24 hours at MTR, which was pretty amazing. And I was with a cool group of people that I hiked with for a majority of the time, my trail family. Let's see, I love sunrises. So I chose to do sunrise summit for Mount Whitney as well. I think I started at like 1:30 in the morning. I sleep above Guitar Lake, and then I think I summited around 4:20 in the morning, which was so nice. That was the first time, and it was like kind of warm enough I can hang out in my sleeping bag to watch the sunrise. But I went up Mount Whitney last year and it was cold as heck, and like I just wanted to be in the storm shelter the whole time with everyone bundled up, and barely made it outside to take my picture with a sign, and it's metal, so you know, hands freeze off after like 2 seconds. And my favorite campsite on the JMT was Thousand Island Lake, which is beautiful. There's a big junction there. People who are do little trips out there, either on the PCT or the JMT or different loops. So it's a nice place to meet other people, and they have some beautiful beaches, and it's just amazing place to be for sunset.
Yeah, that is such a good place. All right.
Yes.
Okay, so now there's a little section about trip planning. These 2 spreadsheets are not mine. They are one of my friends who I met on the JMT, but this was their planning spreadsheet. They went above and beyond. It's crazy. I saved it, or I had them send it to me when I got back, because I thought it would be nice to have for future trips. I haven't made one yet, but you can be like them and go crazy with your planning, or you can just kind of write it on paper, which is mostly what I did. But it looks nice at least. So when you're planning your hike, you want to kind of figure out when you're going to do it. This graph here has the average temperatures, and then a kind of thing in the middle there of the best months to hike. The sweet spot, as you can see, through July to September. I would say maybe July and August would be the best, because September sometimes, depending on the season, can get a little iffy with the cold, but usually that's the good time to go. You can go other times of the year, but that requires a little bit more research, some more experience typically, especially if you're going to be dealing with snow. It can be very dangerous out there, so you want to make sure you know what you're doing. But yeah, those are the best months to hike. This was the only planning spreadsheet I had, and it kind of helped me when I knew the deadline that I had to do. Kind of helped me break out my daily mileage, and then see how the total added up. I didn't exactly stick to this, but I did a pretty good job. And whenever I would do less than I had planned out, I would kind of make it up in the next 2 days. And it was helpful to kind of know, like, all right, here's the point on the map where I'm supposed to be tonight, and here I am now. So I gotta pick up the pace, or I can take it easy today. And I kind of made some notes on the side there as I was planning as well.
It looks very similar to mine.
Yeah.
Google Sheets is great, because then if people ask you for your itinerary, you can literally just add them on and then work on it offline. So if things change while you're on the trail, you can just update it very easily. And so if you had something planned and then you don't make your miles or something, it's just kind of easy to like do the math and
update
figure
it. Yeah, I am a big fan of Google Sheets. It's very helpful. This is a kind of a elevation and landmark and mileage profile. I know it's very small words and hard to see, but you can find this on Google. But that just kind of shows you the the different passes, the different peaks, and how the elevation changes throughout the trail, which is pretty cool.
This is, I think, the one I used for designing the tattoo that I got.
Awesome.
The
yellow, this one?
Yeah.
That's cool.
Pretty neat.
I haven't gotten a JMT tattoo yet, but I have thought about it. We'll see. This is another map that I thought was pretty cool. It has a lot of data in there. So it breaks down, once again, the elevation by the passes and the lower points. At the bottom, you can see kind of how the tree cover goes, the types of land, the slope of the hills, all sorts of stuff. So that's a cool map that I found that I just wanted to share. All right, so now permits. That is a big part of the hiking the JMT. So both of us hiked in like 4 or 5 years ago. Starting in, I believe, this year, they have changed the permit process a little bit. So all of this info is updated to today, so it should be accurate for how it is now. But I don't have experience getting a permit with this system, so take it with a grain of salt. But so according to the National Park Service, last year 97% of JMT permit applications get denied, but don't let that discourage you. If you let that stop you, then you're failing before you even get the chance to get denied. So you might as well just submit a permit or a permit application. When you do apply for your permit, you'll need to know how long you plan on hiking, your start date, your direction. Like Jeff said earlier, there's kind of 2 directions that people take. The northbound is hiking from Whitney Portal, which I spelled wrong there, to Yosemite Valley. And then southbound is from Yosemite Valley to Whitney Portal. The kind of perks of going northbound is it's a little bit easier to get the permits, apparently, when you're hiking northbound. There's also, I guess, if I'll talk about the southbound perks because I did it that way, and then if you want to cover southbound, like why you chose to do it that way.
Northbound,
sorry. Okay, so for southbound, it's the perk of that, I guess, is it's a little bit easier to adjust to the elevation because it starts lower and then it ends higher. So if you maybe are coming from somewhere where you don't have a lot of elevation to train on, it'll be a little bit easier to acclimate. It's yeah, I guess the cons are the permits are, I guess, harder to get. I got lucky and got my first try, my first choice permit. But it is not that way for everybody. So yes, and if you want to talk about going northbound.
I think the reason I actually chose to go northbound is because I wanted to end in Yosemite because it was a big birthday celebration and I had a group campsite at Tuolumne Meadows, and I thought it would be prettier than, you know, a big pile of rocks on Mount Whitney. It was. I did come into Yosemite Valley on a holiday. I think it was like Labor Day or something, whatever. It's like that September 1st or whatever. So it was very crowded after being on the trail for, you know, a long time and seen, you know, many people. I mean, there is a lot of people on the JMT. So if you do decide to hike it solo, you will make friends, which is really great. But yeah, I feel like, I mean, for me, it was had that little challenge to get the permit to go northbound. Again, like you have to get your permit 6 months in advance. And so my like permit window is usually like starts at February 15th. And then because I want to be on the trail on my birthday, which is August 24th. And so on February 15th, I'll set my alarm for like 6:59. At 7 a.m. I'm like logging in, and like the 25 or so permits in like, you know, 7 a.m. and like 26 seconds are all gone. And so like I have to try multiple days until finally I can get my one permit, you know, out of money. So it's just, you know, a lot of little tasks to do to get ready. And then you're like, okay, well, I got my permit. Now I have 6 months to get everything else, you know, to upgrade my gear and do all that stuff. For me, I like to get all the challenging stuff out of the way, and then it can be kind of smooth sailing. So it was really nice to be able to like do Mount Whitney on day 3 and then kind of, you know, make my way. I felt like it was, I don't know, people say it's harder. People have done it both directions multiple times, say northbound is harder. I'm not sure. Maybe eventually I'll do it southbound. But I've also heard the opposite. So I don't know. And then I think back then, it was a little bit different last year when I got permits for another through hike, but maybe because of COVID and things like that. But having to print out your permit and everything to have it on the trail, and permits like Half Dome and stuff, that's very, you need to keep it on you too, because they will get you on your way down from a sunrise summit on Half. I didn't have to
learn that the hard way.
Well, no, I didn't have with me. I was like, woke up late. I was at Clouds Rest Junction and I was like, oh no, I'm late. And then I just like put on what I had and started running down the hill. And then I made it, but I didn't have my permit, but she luckily like at whatever 4 o'clock in the morning or something, she screenshotted all the people who had permits and I was luckily on there. I had a ticket, and then so there was a bunch of people like, do you have any extra tickets, you know, already there. So it's important to have your permits because they will cite you.
It was, so as far as people checking permits, when I went, there were a lot of fires going on, and so Yosemite actually closed down the day after I or on day 2 of my trip. So there was nobody in the park. On the day that I left, I woke up to a sign taped to my tent that said, like, essentially, the park may be closing down due to fire. Hike at your own risk. But like, you can't stay here. You can either go home or start hiking, but you have to do something. In less words than that. But so when I was going, there was nobody around, and there was a group of people at the first campsite I stayed at that was up near Clouds Rest, and they were planning on doing Half Dome in the morning, and they, I guess, had like, there were 3 people there, but 2 of them had a permit and 1 of them didn't. And so they were like, I think we're just gonna chance it. And then right after that conversation, I had gone back to my campsite and was making dinner. And then finally, for the first time in 2 days, I saw a ranger come up and he was talking to them. And I was like, oh, they better not chance their not hiking Half Dome now, because now they know people are watching. So even when the whole thing is on fire, there are still people walking around checking permits. So don't try to chance it. So yes, you'll also want to know this, your starting trailhead and the night one campsite. They ask you that on the permit, so they know where you'll be first night. You'll apply for your permit online, go to the website there, and then apply within the correct time window, which I'll have an example of. Over to the right, I just have a screenshot of the email that that said that I got in. That's what it at least looked like in 2018. This is kind of an example of the time windows. Like you were saying, 6 months in advance is kind of generally when the permit windows open up. So I have July and August pulled up here. So if you're planning to start hiking July 2nd, the permit window for then opens January 15th and closes January 21st. You'll know by January 23rd, and you just have to accept it by this date, and then they'll release any remaining reservations, if there are any, a week and a half later. So I believe this is still kind of currently how they do it. You can go on the website and look up the dates that you're interested in and kind of see. They keep it pretty well updated in my experience. This is what the website looks like right now. I took these screenshots today. So November 13th, which is next Sunday, or this coming Sunday, is when the weekly lotteries for 2023 open up. So that's when the ones for earlier in the year are going to be open. On the right side here, they have, it says future lottery. So on November 13th, the lottery for starting your trip April 28th through May 6th will open up. Again, it's still going to be pretty snowy and cold there. So you will probably want to wait until January, February if you want to hike in summer. But that is what the website looks like. This is an example from someone else from this past year. So when there is an open lottery, this example was, the screenshot was taken in January of 2022. So it's for June 19th through 25th hiking start date. So you'll click register for open lottery, and then you will fill out on the right side here, they give you 8 choices. And then so you can select either a date range or a single date and your entry point, and then your group size. And so you can do up to 8 choices. It's recommended that you fill out all 8 because that you just get more chances to win the lottery. But that is what that looks like. And then after that, you'll kind of, it'll say add to cart, and then you check out, and then you hear back a week to 10 days later is what they say on the website. I'm going to go back just a minute here. So the lottery system for the JMT is based on quotas, where the park limits the total number of JMT through hikers entering all trailheads. They limit it to 60%. So or 60% to be reserved ahead of time, and then 40% are saved for walk-in permits. The quotas change every year, but that's at least what it was last year. The numbers were about 45 hikers per day total, 15 through the Lyle Canyon entrance or trailhead, 20 through Glacier, Happy Isle, and Sunrise, and then 10 for walk-in via Lyle Canyon. So they kind of change those around every year, but they do have a part of the website that kind of breaks down those quotas, so you can check that when you're applying as well. And everything is on this recreation.gov website now.
Which you can also download the app if you
Yes.
want to do everything on the go like me, and I'm always looking for trails. So
It is very helpful that they have an app. Because yeah, if you're on the go, you can just kind of scroll through and be like, oh, this is where I can do the JMT. As far as fees go, there's a $10 fee to enter the lottery. You can submit one application every 7-day window. If you succeed and you win the lottery, you'll be charged an additional $5 per person that's on your application when you confirm your reservation. If it's denied, then you're out $10. Yes. And then there are walk-up spots available, but they are first come, first serve. So if you really want to gamble, you can do that.
you can try Cottonwood Pass and just add on a little bit more mileage.
Yes.
So
that is true. Yeah, there are alternate ways, and you can there's plenty of blogs and people online that have gone through it and have shared their experience. So you can take your time to read all the blogs and research everything. So after you get your permit accepted, you're onto the training and gear testing phase. So here are my pictures from my training and gear testing. My hair was much shorter back then. So on that top right, I went backpacking with friends. I did the 6-pack of peaks. That Instagram screenshot is from my apartment complex's gym. The bathroom of the gym. I loaded up my backpack with 11 days worth of food and all of my gear, and I went on the stair stepper at my apartment gym. And I did that for a couple times a week for a few weeks. It was very painful, but I do think that it was good training. I also, yes.
Did you live in California at the time?
I did, yes. I did. I lived in Santa Clara.
Okay.
So that helped because with the elevation training. I know there are some people that don't live where there are high elevations. So or right now I live in Tennessee. So if I were to do the JMT, I would have to do elevation climb, like getting used to the elevation. That's not something that I have had to do yet, but when I do, I'll figure it out. Yeah. Do you have any training stories?
Let's see. So once I got my permit, actually I knew I wanted to do the JMT, and I heard, I think, for 2 years before. So I started acquiring gear and doing all that stuff. The permit was just like the icing on the cake, and I was like already in. But I knew I wanted to do the JMT, so I started researching training. And I live on the coastal California side in the Santa Cruz Bay, and so I found the 6-pack of peaks because I was like training for the JMT, and then that's how I found the 6-pack of peaks, and I was like, perfect. I drive to Southern California. I'm actually not far from the Eastern Sierra, but I thought the 6-pack of peaks was great because it was such a gradual thing. So doing that, incorporating the Northern California peaks as well, acquiring my gear, your bear canister and your pack, and then all the little things that kind of add in. And then I would do like shakedown hikes of the Skyline to the Sea Trail, which is actually no more because of the Big Basin fire, the CZU fire through Big Basin, which is really sad. But so I would do that from like sea to Skyline, make sure my gear was working properly. I knew how to use it properly. carrying the weight, and I'm still getting a little bit of elevation starting at the ocean and ending up at Saratoga Gap, which is, you know, going to the other side to Santa Clara and everything. So a couple shakedown hikes and, you know, getting all my gear situated and making sure I can actually carry over 30 pounds. 37 pounds, I think, is what I started at, but that was with like 3 liters of water, and realized that there's water, at least when I went everywhere on the trail, and to fill up and not carry so much, which was definitely a blessing.
I feel like I was too nervous that I would like just run out of water somehow, so I carried more water than I needed to the whole time, but we'll get to that when we talk about things we do differently. Go through the next. I have a couple more gear slides, but I'll go through them a little quick. But this is mainly what my backpack looked like after a resupply, because it was very full. So I had a lot of stuff on the outside. Now my backpack looks a little bit different. I don't like to carry as much stuff on the outside, but it worked for me then.
We have this pack.
Oh yeah. Awesome.
Yeah. Great pack. A lot of people love it who are those ultralighters.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, I like that pack a lot. This is my tent. It's a big Agnes Fly Creek ultralight 1-person tent, I think is the end of the name there. But I also have the Garcia bear can, which I think is a little bit heavier than the blue and black ones that are also really popular. This one was just the cheapest option at the time, so I bought it. My stove is a jet boil. I got it at an REI garage sale, and the little thing that you press to light it doesn't work, but it was way cheaper than it would have been new, so it worked for me then. For water, I carried 2 smart water bottles, 2 1-liter smart water bottles that fit in the sides of my pack really well, and I could attach it to my Sawyer filter. And then I also had it wasn't Camelback brand, so I'm not gonna disparage the Camelback name, but I had a bladder that was some cheap brand, and it ended up bursting in my pack and soaking my whole sleeping bag. So I am not a fan of bladders, because that was not a fun day. And I carried a solar panel to charge my inReach and my phone. It worked. The one that I have is the Rav Power solar charger pictured there. It has little like eyelets on the corners, so I could just strap it to my pack as I was hiking, which was really helpful. I could also just kind of set it out while I was making dinner or lunch or whatever. I made my own gaiters out of old socks that didn't have matches but kind of matched each other. And they worked pretty well. They were a little bit tattered by the end, but they did the job. They kept dirt and stuff out of my shoes, and they made me distinctive enough that some people that I had met along the way saw me hiking ahead, and they said that they only recognized me because of my rainbow gaiters. So that was pretty funny. And then my boots are Keen brand Women's Voyager Mid. And I also got them at a REI garage sale and have no complaints.
Hey, Emma, this is Jeff. I just want to jump in and ask a quick question about your boots. What is the bread clip thing on your shoelaces for?
So I worked at a Girl Scout camp just after high school. And when girls were feeling homesick there, we would give them a bread tab and say, clip it to your shoe. And when you see other girls walking around camp, you can share a secret little wink with them, because you know that you're not alone in feeling homesick. And so that was a way to kind of combat homesickness with the girls that were staying for a week or more. And then a lot of the counselors, when we left camp, would stick a bread tab on our shoes to show that we were homesick for camp, like for each other in the real world outside of camp. So I had a bread tab on my shoe while I was hiking, just to, you know, have that little camp memory. But that's why that's there. This is the last gear slide. So if you want to talk about your gear shakedowns.
Okay, so my tent was a tarp tent, and the model was called a Pro Trail. It was 1.5 pounds. And although I have the sticks, it also could be set up with my trekking poles, since, you know, I mean, I didn't want to carry the extra, you know, whatever grams. So I ended up just using my trekking poles, since I was going to be holding on to those for 23 days in a row. And it worked out really great. It was very lightweight. I ditch all my stuff sacks and just shove everything in my pack, just so I can like mold to each other and synergistically live together in my pack. My bear canister was a BV 500. At that time, that was like the cheapest one at REI. It's the tall one. And I was able to fit 11 or 12 days worth of food. And that was like perfect. And then I take it on even my smaller trips, and I could just like put a bunch more stuff in there, and everything is kind of contained inside that container, even for just like a weekender. It's really nice. I had a little pocket rocket. I don't have a jet boil yet. I'm kind of reluctant to buy one because everyone burns their food that I know, and I don't want to do that. So I've been super stoked with my little pocket rocket, and it's, you know, it's taken me adventures, and I've been pretty happy with it. Again, yeah, the smart water bottles is great. They're really flexible. If you're using them, one for like a bidet, a backcountry bidet, it's really nice because it squeezes really good. You can wash your hands, you can like shower with it, do all that good stuff too. Those are just really great because, you know, they're so flexible. And then a 3-liter Camelback. And I had an inline Sawyer water filter that was on the tube for my Camelback. But I feel like it's really nice to just like chug out of a, you know, cup when you're like dying on your like way up the mountain. So sometimes I just want to do that. So I found myself like chugging out of the top part of it, which wasn't that nice. I just wanted to like have a big glass of water, which I have added into my pack now, or now I got like a different water bottle system too. So but either way, it all worked, and it was all great too. And then again, like Emma, an Osprey Aura AG 65 liters, which is perfect to hold my big bear canister, my sleeping bag, my tent, and everything inside. I don't like anything hanging on the outside. I think I just had my really nice like little, what do you call that? The cell thing, that the foam cell one that you can put on the outside. And that's like perfect. Yeah. That's the only thing I'll have on the outside. Plus when you're packed down, it actually helps it not from like falling over all the time, which is like a big deal when you're like your pack up all day and like putting it on and like doing everything if you just want to like sit on a rock or something. And just a lot easier to have that out on the outside for balance too. Let's see. I'm a big fan of Goal Zero. I've had expert voice through my jobs and stuff, which is really nice. So they give you like discounts if you take little quizzes. So I'd get Goal Zero is one of the companies that's on expert voice. So I was able to get some new panels. And I do like the small one, like you, like the 3, and then I always put it on my pack and then carry a couple of the battery packs. So I'm not always like constantly charging, and then I always have like backup and backup. So not everything's relied on solar panel at one time, which they're so great. And I've heard people say there's good ones, cheap ones on Amazon. Anchor is a good brand too, but I'm just such a good fan of the Goal Zero products. Let's see.
Yeah, and I had like external chargers that I would attach the solar panel and then use that to charge my phone. So I think I had 2 that I would switch out.
Yeah, makes it. I mean, sometimes they could get heavy, but if you have just like a small fun. It's like perfect for a
Yeah.
charge through the day.
Yeah, and it was a little heavy, but it was worth it to me. Like there's some, I don't know, I'm not a super ultralight hiker. Some people would be like, oh, I could never, but I'm like, I'll carry a couple extra ounces if it means I can have my phone and my inReach charged.
Well,
Oh,
it's
yeah.
like, which a lot of people love because they're such a wide toe box. I think they're great. And like me, who stubs their toe all the time, they're really great. But I switched last minute. I was like, I need something lightweight. I don't want to have heavy feet at the end of the day, plus all the blood that, is going to be at the end, everything. So I switched to Solomon trail runners, like super lightweight. They zip tie the speed tie or whatever. It was really easy. You just tuck it into the tongue. And like, I love those because I didn't feel any extra weight on my feet. They dried really fast. And they were just so perfect. And then when I climbed up Half Dome, I was like, oh yes, these are really grippy. I'm so glad I got these. So yeah, it's pretty great. All right.
So there are 3 kind of main resupply points that people go to. There's Red's Meadow, VVR, which is Vermilion Valley Resort, and MTR, which is Muir Trail Ranch. I resupplied at Red's Meadow and MTR, but I visited Vermilion Valley Resort, even though it was not on my original plan. I met somebody who told me that if you do dishes, as you can see me doing on the top right corner there, they will give you free food. And so I am below that enjoying my free steak dinner that I got for washing dishes for 2 hours at VVR. So that was fun and was worth it to me. Nobody else that came over on the ferry with me wanted to do dishes. They offered it to everybody. They were like, who wants to join Pepper and do dishes and get free food? And everyone else is like, no, we're gonna go sit around and not do that. So I just did dishes alone, but it was worth it for the free food. There's also some information on that side about kind of at least the prices in 2018. I did not look up to see if they are different now, but that's what they were. There's also a few other places that you can resupply, but some of them require like hiking out off the trail, taking other passes, adding some days, stuff like that. On that top picture there is Red's Meadow, I believe, and then the bottom picture is the Muir Trail Ranch resupply hut. When I was doing research and kind of getting ready to hike the JMT, I heard some bad things about Muir Trail Ranch, that they were very like strict and mean, and if you didn't listen to them exactly, they'll like yell at you. I didn't experience that. So I don't know, but other people say that if you don't listen to them, they'll, be really mean or like not give you your bucket or something. But I had an okay experience, so I can't speak to that. But yeah, at most,
I read that in the blogs too. Like,
yeah,
they're really rude. Don't go into the, cabins that are rented. Those are, for the non-backpackers and stuff like that. But when I got a very pleasant experience, and the woman who helped me with my, at Muir Trail Ranch, helped me with my resupply. She's like, I came here one summer as a backpacker and I loved it. And I just decided to come back and help out. So she was happy. So we were all happy.
maybe they had some employees or something that were less than happy a few years ago, and the rumors just kept going, but now they've replaced them with nice people. Maybe that's what happened. I don't know, because I heard some things and I did not have a bad experience. So so for as far as food planning goes, I kind of spread everything out on a tarp in my living room, wrote out kind of what was going for what day, and then kind of group them all together. You can kind of just do whatever works for you, but that's what worked for me. What was your kind of food planning process like?
My food planning process was, I wanted to go lightweight. So which I don't think I've seen it lately. It was a box of all these crazy different freeze-dried foods from REI. They're from, I think, Harmony House or Harmony Foods. So it was a lot of dehydrated veggies and like onions and garlic and things like that. So I just wanted to make sure I had lightweight stuff, and then a lot of superfoods, because I was like, well, I don't want to pack too much food because it's gonna be weight. So I packed a lot of things that packed like either like superfood mushrooms in my coffee, or bone broth for bones and joints support and things like that. So I just make sure I got a lot of those things in with my soups and my breakfast and stuff. So I had more well-rounded stuff that was super light. I kind of just bagged everything up. I took them out of the bigger bags and put them into smaller Ziploc bags, even though I try to reduce as much waste as I can. I just felt like that was the easiest thing to do for everything to fit in my bear box. And so I was okay with that. And then I just threw in some fun stuff. I wish I threw in a little bit more candy and stuff, and a little bit more like stuff that I wasn't going to carry that I can just gourmet out on resupply day, because it's a smart thing to do, because you're not going to be carrying it. And we were laying out all our boxes at MTR to kind of organize everything and put it back in. And one of my fellow hikers' wife sent him like a big sausage and a big block of cheese, and he's like, well, I'm not taking this, everybody, like, and we're all just eating it
While you're packing.
Meat in a long time. So it was really perfect. So it's nice to like incorporate things like that as a treat for your resupply days, which is really something to look forward to as well.
Yeah, that's a good tip. I wish I had done that as well. There are at least, I think at every of the 3 main resupply parts, there are these things called hiker boxes. So people can just kind of dump the stuff that they don't want. Maybe they overpacked, maybe they realize that their socks aren't as comfortable as they wanted them to be, and they don't need them, or they don't need a book that they brought with them. So you can leave stuff. There's food only hiker boxes, and then there's gear and random stuff only hiker boxes. There was some really random stuff in there. None of these pictures are mine. I found these online, but I remember in the one at VVR, there was like hairspray and hair dye. I was like, why would you like think that you want that? But okay. There was a lot of like half empty fuel canisters, maybe from people that were leaving and weren't able to bring it on the plane, so they just figured they'd leave it for somebody else who needed it. There were like tent stakes. I actually got a pair of socks that I don't know why they put them in there, but there are laundry facilities at VVR, so I thought the socks were really cute, and they were like some like expensive, nice brand of hiking, like merino wool socks. So I threw them in with the laundry that my group had bought a laundry token. And then I got new socks, and I still have them. So if you want to carry extra stuff, you can find treasures in the hiker box. You can also leave behind food or switch out your food. I got kind of sick of the trail mix that I had brought for my whole trip, so I found other trail mix in the box and swapped it out. So it's kind of fun to look through those.
When I was waiting when I went to VVR, oh yeah, your first beer is free at VVR, because
yes, that too.
Beer, which is really nice to look forward to, and then you get your cheeseburger. And of course, they do have a lot of volunteer work, people doing the dishes, people helping out. And there was one person, I think it took like 2.5 hours to get my cheeseburger. So I was like raiding the hiker boxes. Ate so many peanut butter M&Ms that I found in there, and then I just remember being sick because I hadn't had for so long, but it was a treat to find those. Yeah, there's so much good stuff in those hiker boxes, and it's really nice to get rid of stuff you don't need, and hopefully someone could use it in the future. It's a really good system they have there, and they're all very, very organized.
They are. yeah, it was really fun to look through the hiker boxes. I feel like if I do the JMT again, that would be a thing that I'd be looking forward to.
Yes.
Next I have safety. So I carried a Garmin InReach. The kind of blurry sideways picture is mine. That's the only picture that I could find of it. But I put some nice looking promotional pictures on there too. I had the app that allowed me to text on the or like send messages on the InReach, but text kind of through my phone, so that I could stay in touch with my family and other people that were making sure I didn't die on the trail. It could also see the map. If an emergency did happen, there's a SOS button and you can call help to your location. I also carried a first aid kit that you can see on the top left there. And then before I left, I took a wilderness first aid course. That picture is from online. Mine was in a REI kind of basement room, so it wasn't as exciting as this picture looks, but we pretty much did that same thing just on the floor at REI. But kind of teaching how to deal with emergencies in the wilderness using what you have on you. So that was really helpful. Thankfully, I didn't have to use any of those skills, but it felt a lot better to know that I had the knowledge to kind of help people out if anything did go wrong. I kind of got out of order with the slides here. So back to food planning. I made a lot of my food myself with my dehydrator. Some of it worked out better than others. As you can see, that first left-hand corner, I was trying to make like a coconut curry, and I tried to dehydrate actual coconut milk, which I realized very quickly that it did not work. But yeah, it was trial and error, and I learned a lot. I also ended up getting, it was I'd say about 50-50 food that I had bought and food that I had made. So a lot of my food was from the Food for the Soul brand. I am not sponsored by them, but I just really like them. So this is a shameless plug for them. At one point, I think I was listed as an ambassador on their website, and I think they did send me a few meals for free. But I'm no longer getting benefits from them, but they are still really good at making food. So, and then I also, that top left corner there is the trail mix that I had gotten sick of. And yeah, Snickers were my best friend on the trail. I wish I'd brought more, but I rationed them out. And yeah, my favorite lunch in the bottom middle picture there, which tasted a lot better on the trail, because I've had it off trail and it's all right, but it's not that good. I had that green spinach tortilla wrap, and then I filled it with a packet of tuna and sometimes other stuff. I think sometimes I did a peanut butter and jelly as well, but that I ate that like every single day, and I don't think I could do that off trail. I think your stomach kind of changes when you're out in the wilderness. I also had a couple of days where I had fancy food. So at Tuolumne Meadows, I bought a double cheeseburger because I could. And so that was a nice surprise. I didn't realize that they would their food area would be open because of the smoke and stuff like that. They had been closed down, and then they'd reopened, I guess, the day before I got up there. So that was a nice burger to have. I also met this couple on the right side on the trail, and they had fishing stuff, and so they caught those fish that you see, and then we made fish tacos. I donated some of my tortillas and my not my tuna, because we had real fish that was freshly caught. But I had some like sauces and little packets. So we kind of combined all our stuff and made little fish tacos. So that was fun. We're kind of running out of time. So transportation, arrival, departure was probably the most complicated part for me. I originally had made plans. I had met someone who was traveling northbound and I was doing southbound. So we were gonna exchange car keys, kind of meet in the middle, exchange car keys, and then drive each other's cars to the each other's kind of trailheads, and switch back. And it would have worked really well, but one of the people in that group ended up having really bad elevation sickness and left the trail early, so it kind of messed up all of the plans. Thankfully, my family drove up to meet me at Whitney Portal and then drove me back up to Yosemite. The screenshot there is from Whitney Portal to Lee Vining, because I took that screenshot this afternoon and currently the road into Yosemite is closed, so Google Maps wouldn't let me show the map. But it takes closer to 3 hours to get back to Yosemite Valley from Whitney Portal. So it's definitely something that you have to kind of keep in mind and figure out. I know there are some like shuttle services, but they're very expensive. So if you have friends or family who will shuttle you and buy you pizza and beer and Snickers at the end, it's a better way to do it. You can see my car, my old car, at the end there. You can't tell in the picture, but it is covered in ash and dust and tree sap because it had been sitting in a closed down, smoky Yosemite for 19 days. What did you do for your transportation?
I was really lucky to be able to have friends drop me off and pick me up. It was nice because I made a group campsite, so they weren't really like, they had other things to come to and celebrate and stay overnight and hang out when they picked me up. It was really easy, and I just like let them have my car so they didn't have to put the miles on their car and all that stuff. So it was really nice to be able to be dropped off at the trailhead and picked up at the trailhead. And I didn't exit the trail anywhere. I only did one resupply, so I didn't have to exit because I was lazy. And so I didn't have to worry about any types of transportation there. I know there is, like, when you're from my experience when I did the High Sierra Trail 2 summers ago, and I actually exited Whitney Portal, there is a guy who does a shuttle, and they called him like Lone Pine Dave, and then they're like, well, Lone Pine Dave is in Yosemite, you can get Lone Pine Steve and Lone Pine Charles, so there's like a whole network of people, but sometimes it's very challenging to get a hold of them. And I was lucky enough to someone overheard us trying to like call these people, and they're like, I think we can fit you in our car, and then they took us to the little hostel, Mount Whitney Hostel Hotel, which was really nice. And then I got a ride from there, but it was nice to just get out of the mountain, take a shower, and do all that good stuff before actually driving 6 hours, whatever. So it's not that. There's a lot of stuff I know from a lot of people who don't live in California. There's, a lot more things to consider, like traveling on an airplane with trekking poles, things like that. Acclimating to altitude and things like that if you're coming from a place where you don't have much altitude or you can't train in altitude. So that's other things to consider when you're considering transportation and things like that. All that is probably a lot more to plan, which I'm so grateful to have to do that.
I know there's also Facebook groups that are there's kind of like just general Facebook groups. I know for women there's a like JMT Women's Hiker Facebook group.
Ladies, the JMT.
Yes, ladies of the JMT. That's the one. So there's a lot of advice, and people will kind of help with transportation on that Facebook group and others. There's some that have like they'll share a Google sheet with where everyone can kind of write like when they're going, and kind of work out transportation through that. I mean, be careful because it's strangers on the internet, but for the most part, they're also nice hiking people. So that is another helpful way to plan stuff.
They're really good resources because I mean, there's the JMT, but the ladies at JMT is such a great group for all resources besides transportation. It's like if someone's getting on the trail before you and conditions and things like that. So, if you don't have to bring your ice axe and your crampons, it's really nice to not have to do that if you're in the early season, what the water crossings are like. So it's really nice to connect with other people. Even if you're never going to physically meet them in person, you might. Like, it's really great. One of my friends who was hiking southbound while I was hiking northbound, she told me she was at a camp with 9 women solo hikers, and they all knew each other from the group, but actually met up at a campsite, and it was just really cool and just like neat stuff to connect to, especially if you're a solo hiker, and just having those resources is very cool and put a lot of ease on me because it was like my first big hike.
Yeah, me too. And that was I did meet up with one person that from that ladies, so the JMT Facebook group, and she was actually kind of quitting and going off trail, but we met up for a little bit, and she kind of could like have a little like vent session before she left. So it was nice, and I'll probably never see her again, but it was cool to have that connection. So
yeah, totally. I think like the JMT, they wear teal bandanas so you can spot on the trail. So I always carry my teal bandana if I do just like a section of it, just in case. It's nice to see other people out there in some sort of connection.
All right. So on my trip, I did not do Half Dome, but if you want to talk a little bit about Half Dome before we wrap up.
So I assumed when I got my original permit, because they're like, do you want to do Mount Whitney? I'm like, yes. I clicked the little thing when I first got my permit 6 months in advance, and I just assumed Half Dome was on there. But as I get on the trail and you get intel from all the southbounders and things like that, you can talk about things up ahead for them, and same for you. And I realized that if I wanted to climb Half Dome, that I would need a permit, and I didn't want to risk getting a citation even for sunrise. So when I was going through Tuolumne, I went to the station and was able to add on a Half Dome permit while on my hike. And they're like, told me all the details. You have to leave tonight just to be able to like use this Half Dome permit and things like that. So it was nice to acquire just a separate permit on the trail. I didn't have to worry about it ahead of time, and I lucked out to be able to get it just a couple days before I was actually going to do Half Dome. And of course, again, I did it at sunrise because it's my favorite time of day. In the photo, it was like, I don't even think this photo is edited at all. And I ran up Subdome in complete darkness. I had no clue what it looked like until I went way down, and I was like, oh my goodness, I shouldn't have done that. But it was fine. And then I could barely see. And then so as I got to the Subdome, and then you can see, the whatever you call them. What are they called?
The cables.
The cables. Yeah. So you can I can barely make those out in the dark sky. And luckily there's a bunch of gloves at the bottom, but if you want to bring your own gloves for grip, I think all of it for climbing the cables is in your hand grip. I think that's the most important you should be able to do. Is have secure, hands, because if your feet slip, you'll still be able to have the strength in your arms. So as I was halfway up the cables, I don't know what the mountain is, like Buttress or something. The sun started peeking over that, so then I just got that pink glow, which is really cool. And by the time I made to the top, it was like very light out, and it was great. And Yeah, on my way down, I did see a ranger and giving citations. So it's definitely something to watch out for, even the wee hours in the morning, because they'll be up there. But it's totally worth it.
Yeah, I regret not doing Half Dome. I didn't know at the time that I'd be moving out of California the next year. And so I just kind of assumed like, it'll be here. I'll just do it later. And I still can, but it's a lot more difficult to get out there now. So I wish that I did do that, but it is still on my list one day. All right, so now have a FAQ / anything else kind of section. So one of the frequently asked questions is there snow? That was all of the snow that I encountered the whole time. It from the bottom picture, it looks like a lot, but from the top picture, you can see it was definitely not a lot. I had my hiking poles, but I didn't have, like crampons or any other snow gear. And that was fine because I had heard from others that had finished a week or two before me that there was hardly any snow. So I was okay, but you will want to check the weather and snow conditions. Another thing is, or a question that I've heard is what do you do in your downtime, or do you ever get bored? I brought a sketchbook and would just kind of sketch either my campsite or random things. I also wrote down and journaled every night, which I then adapted into my blog posts once I got back. So I kind of remember the things that happened every day and how I was feeling every day. So I did that. I also downloaded episodes of The Office and would watch that in my tent. So there are things, but it's kind of hard to get bored out there. It's just so beautiful and you meet people and it's awesome. I have also, is there water available? Yes, we kind of went over that, but there is lots of water all along the trail. You will want to check for drought conditions because these things do change year to year. For bears, I saw 3 bears, but I saw one on the trail and it just kind of walked maybe 100 feet or so in front of the group that I was hiking with at the time, and then just went down into the bushes and went on its merry way. The other 2 bears, there was one that I saw when I was dropping off my resupply at Red's Meadow. I had taken, I drove up there the 2 days before I left, and there was a bear in you take a little bus from kind of the Mammoth area up to Red's Meadow, and so we passed a bear on the way, and of course everyone's hanging out the bus windows trying to take pictures, and then when we came back, Yosemite had been closed since the day after I left, and so it was very empty, and so the bears felt more comfortable. So I was getting into my car, and my family was there, and then all of a sudden we saw a baby bear run across the parking lot and up a tree, and then Mama Bear was very close behind, so we just kind of carefully, quietly just watched and got in the cars, but that was awesome to see. And I think that if Yosemite was open, I don't think that would have happened in the middle of the day because that parking lot would have been full of cars and people, but because it was closed, which was a rare thing, the bears were just kind of running around right in the middle of that area. So that was cool and not scary. I was never really concerned or frightened of any bears that in my experience, but I was kind of prepared. As far as crowds, there were quite a lot of people. I saw people almost every day. I'd say the second and maybe first, second, third day there were a lot less, again because of the fiery conditions. So I don't know how it normally is, but towards the end, once the smoke kind of cleared and the fires had died down a little bit, there were still quite a lot of people. I would say it is a difficult hike at times, but if you hike a lot, then you should be prepared for it. It wasn't, you know, like super strenuous. There were some tougher parts and some easy parts, but it wasn't you know, there wasn't a lot of like rock scrambling or technical parts, at least on the route that I took. And how long it takes is really kind of up to the hiker. I don't know if you have any additions.
Yeah, unfortunately I didn't get to see any bears on that trip. I heard about them, but never, as I made my way, I never got to see them. They had already like left the meadow or something. But boy, I would rather go into an empty Yosemite than a Yosemite on Labor Day or Memorial Day or whatever day I went in there, because that would be amazing. And I would
don't think it's something I'll ever get to experience again. It was definitely a once in a lifetime thing.
Yeah. And I think with difficulty is, I mean, when you train on the 6-pack of peaks in Southern California or any other 6-pack of peaks and get used to the terrain and things like that, and you kind of get used to it. It's like climbing and then descending, and you realize that it's not as scary and intimidating as it seems once you get through it. And I think if I could do it by myself, then a lot of people should be able to get out there and do it, and then do it with a buddy or something. I think that's what I would do next time, hopefully, or at least have someone come with me on sections.
Yeah.
But it's challenging in many ways than just hiking, mentally and physically challenging. Yeah. And I think there was, I don't know if it's the blog on socialhiker.net where you find out about the 6-pack of peaks and things like that. But I think it says at 10.5 miles a day, which is a pretty good pace. You can do it in 20 days or 23 days, something like that. So, yeah, you can take that in consideration too. The blogs are great resources. And I pretty much followed the socialhiker.net itinerary mostly to a T, which is a great resource. So,
yeah. Me too. That's what I started my research with. So, all right, for my last section here, we can go over what we would do differently next time. So we have both mentioned some of the things. I'd say my top 3. I have done other backpacking trips, not as long, but the longest since the JMT was last summer. I did a 10-day trip in Alaska, and for that trip I switched out my boots for trail running shoes, and like you were saying earlier with yours, that made a huge difference, and I don't think I'll go back to boots. They are nice to have, but I am all team trail runner now. So they're just lighter and dry out faster. And yeah, so that is probably the main thing that I do differently. I too would bring a friend or have people meet up with me. It was definitely an interesting experience to be solo and kind of meet people along the way. And I'm glad I did it that way, but it would be nice to have somebody that I already know. I think that would kind of bring a different experience, and I want to see what that is like. I guess a third thing, I think I would be more financially prepared. There were some things that I didn't expect, and so it was a little bit stressful because I didn't like bring extra cash, and so it ended up okay, but it was a little bit stressful where it's like, oh no, like what if I don't know, have an emergency or something, and I hadn't planned like financially for things that could happen. So thankfully I didn't run into anything that made it bad, but there were I guess I just could have been better with the financial planning of it. I didn't really pay attention to how everything would add up, as far as like permits and even like the gas to get up there, the gas to get home, my like all the little things. I didn't really pay attention to how it added up. So I wish that I had put together a financial spreadsheet just to kind of know where I was. But you know, it wasn't a life-altering financial decision or anything, but I should have been smarter about that and maybe saved up a little bit more for potential emergencies. But I think those are kind of my top 3 of things I do differently.
I think that's a big thing to consider too, is like you're not getting income for an entire month. At least with me, I took a whole month off work, had to pay 2 rents before I left and everything, made sure everything was in order before getting on the trail and ready to go once I got off the trail. So it's important to do the whole finance thing. And then, yeah, in some of the campsites, there are like an $8 camping, like when you're in Tuolumne, and I think there was another one, maybe at the trailhead. So just little things like that add up, and maybe you're going to want to have 3 burgers in 24 hours. Thing to know, and all that. I think, yeah, I would probably do one more resupply. I still wouldn't want to leave the trail very much. So I would probably add in one more resupply, definitely incorporate more candy and sweets, and maybe a book. It's hard if you don't have Google at your fingertips, but you can ponder all day with your trail family about things and like just, speculate on things, but not have the for sure answer, which is really also self-beat moment. And then let's see, I don't know if there's anything else I would do differently besides the things I mentioned. Maybe a couple more luxury items, but yeah.
I think for you mentioned a book. I was also starting grad school as soon as I got back, like the week after I got back. And so I had downloaded the textbooks that I was going to need as soon as school started, a few of them in audiobook version, then a few of them just in ebook version. And so my goal was to listen and read them all and have a head start. And I probably listened to like half of one of them. So I have the opposite. I'm glad I didn't, or I wish I didn't bring the books, because then I was just stressing myself out about future life stuff that I didn't need to worry about while I was hiking.
True.
But an entertaining book would have been a different story, I think. So I guess I will open it up. I know ran a bit over the time that we had originally said, but if anyone has any questions, you can type your questions into the Q&A section. I'm not sure, this is my first time on a Zoom conference like this, so I'm not sure if I have to do anything to make those questions pop up, but I think you can enter questions in the chat or the question and answer area. If you don't have any questions, you can scan the QR code that's here. There's a quick 3-minute survey that just kind of helps us kind of know what you liked, what you didn't like, what you want to see more of in the future. And if you fill out that survey, you will get a chance to win a $40 REI gift card, early access to registration for the 2023 Six-Pack Peaks challenges, and then the coveted Homecoming 2022 badge on your profile on the website, which will show that you attended our first of our hopefully annual Homecoming 2022 events, and we will also be eternally grateful for your feedback. Don't see any questions coming in. I don't know if they can come in, but we'll just kind of wait. And maybe Jeff will pop in and say some things.
Yeah, I've got I'll pop in. I just have one question, and you can both answer this. What would you do it again? Would you hike the JMT again?
I definitely would. Yes.
I would too. I'd probably go southbound.
Yeah, I'd want to try it northbound, maybe.
Maybe we can like
You can,
other next time.
yeah. It'd be fun.
What about you, Jeff?
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I've hiked it twice so far, and I would love to do it again. Maybe with one of my kids sometime. They're adults now, but if they could break away for, I don't know, almost 3 weeks. It takes about 3 weeks for me. I could probably do it faster, but why? You know,
Yeah.
it's so that would be a lot of fun for me.
Yeah, I definitely would bring a buddy next time.
Yeah.
But I think it's probably the coolest and best thing that I've ever done for
Mhm.
myself, like the experience.
Yeah. Yeah. I learned a lot, just like not just about hiking, but about myself and the limits that I can kind of push myself to, and what it takes. And it wasn't all, happy and amazing. There were some kind of rough days where I was like, I'm just gonna quit. Like I can't keep doing this. But I did. So whenever I'm kind of having a hard day, I can think back and be like, you know what, you walked 211 miles. You can, send that heart email or set up the doctor's appointment that you're like trying to struggle through right now. So it makes it a little bit easier to do hard stuff.
For sure. Hey, thank you both for sharing about your JMT experiences. I really enjoyed hearing the different thought processes and the planning that you did, and seeing a little bit about your different experiences on the trail. It's been awesome.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, absolutely. It's always fun to talk to you.